Welcome to Stronger Together. Our special guest today is Brian Border. For those of you that don't know Brian is a area manager for me up in the LA markets. He runs the Santa Clarita branch along with the Santa Barbara, the Kern, several branches underneath him. Brian is going to talk to us a little bit about jumbo loans today and specifically asset utilization program, because I know that there's a lot of people out there that have questions on that. So just to give you a little statistics on Brian closed about, we'll call it 30 million last year. We'll round it up a little bit. Of that, 18% was jumbo. So if you think you're at an IMB and can't do jumbo, that's not true. He's living proof right here. The region itself only did about 10%. So he definitely knows what he's doing. So Brian, give us a little bit of history on your asset utilization program.
So the asset utilization program here at loanDepot is unlike what I've seen elsewhere. And I came from, we both came from Wells Fargo, right? So 10 years there, they had asset dissipation program, which is, the same thing, just different verbiage. But it was a lot more restrictive there. So at the bank, we had to take whatever the amount of assets that the borrower had, and they changed the iteration of the program a couple times. But at one point, you would divide the assets by the term of the loan. So if you were dealing with a 30-year loan, you were having to divide those asset totals by 30 years. And most of the time, that was a deal killer. If somebody didn't have just a tremendous amount of assets, you were dealing with a very small income figure after you gave it a 30-year amortization. And at some point, they shortened it to 15 years, which helped a little bit, but it's still nothing like what we have here at loanDepot, where we only divide the assets by 7 years, 84 months.
Got it. So let me make sure I understand. So if I want to do this loan, I'm going to take assets, all my borrower's assets, and that's what I'm going to use to qualify?
So you can use all of the borrower's assets. There are some haircuts that we have to take. Obviously, anything liquid, checking, savings, money market, we get to take 100% of that value. Things like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, CDs, we're going to take a 20% haircut from those assets. And then if you get into retirement assets, you're going to take a 30% haircut for those. But you can use them all. And it doesn't matter whether the borrower is of retirement age or not. So that's one key difference between, I believe, the agency programs and this program. So you don't have to be of retirement age to use retirement assets.
Got it. Okay, so I can take my assets and I just add them all together and divide it by 7 years or 84?
Yeah, 80. Essentially, once you take the small haircuts for each category of assets, let's just say everything's liquid for the time being, you would take that total dollar amount. If they're doing, obviously we're doing a purchase, so you got to back out what they're using for their down payment. And then you're going to take the remaining balance and divide it by 84.
And when would I use this versus like a bank statement program? Obviously, we're using different ways of qualifying, but.
Well, if you have a borrower that's heavy asset in the bank, that's going to be your borrower. A bank statement program, that's looking more at cash flow. So somebody at the end of the month may not have that much money left in their bank account. Therefore, a asset dissipation calculation on a bank statement borrower might result in nothing. Most of their income, their deposits are going in, their expenses are going out. They're not really sitting on a pile of cash. So this is going to be somebody that's asset heavy. Maybe they've got an investment portfolio, but they don't have an income stream. Maybe they're not employed anymore, or maybe they're just sitting on assets that are invested. So that would be the borrower profile.
And so profile for a bank statement it would be more somebody like self-employed that has a lot of deposits going into their bank. We're going to do a calculation differently than the other one, but that's the way that we would qualify that one, correct?
Correct. Correct. So
Okay.
this program is not necessarily, it's totally different from a bank statement program in that there's not really we're not looking for a monthly cash flow. We're looking for a pile of money that is sitting somewhere in various accounts to qualify for this program.
Hey, I am too. If you find it, let me know. I'm looking for a pile of cash too. So let me ask you a question, Brian. So I'm doing jumbo loans, and I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the best tactic here for picking my jumbo loans? Like, I get a little confused, if I go to price them. How do I know what tidbits could you give somebody if they're like trying to figure this out, because we have so many jumbo products?
So I think the biggest miss with a lot of people at the company, perhaps because we have such an awesome piece of technology within Mello, or the Mello rates for that matter, is people will price a loan not looking at guidelines. So they're going in looking for rates and pricing, and they're relying on our system to come back with the answers. So if you put in, a particular purchase scenario with a purchase price, loan amount, FICO score, debt ratio, the system's going to spit out a number, right? But that has nothing to do with the guidelines. So I think it's really important to not forget the amount of information that is sitting inside YOTA. And there's not a whole ton of non-conforming programs, but if you just made it a point of going in and reading through, at a high level, the matrix, and then really digging in deeper into the lending guidelines, you really have to know the ins and outs of the programs and not just rely on our technology to spit out a rate, because the rate's one piece, but the qualifying guidelines are something completely different. And that's really on us as professionals to know that and to constantly be learning and educating ourselves on what's out there. So if you didn't dive into this program in YOTA, you probably wouldn't know anything about it or how to calculate it. And the system's going to pull out a price, and you're not really going to know what to do with it.
So on the asset utilization program, where would I find that if I was going to do? Because I don't think I've looked for asset utilization. I don't think I've found that. Do you know what program that's under, or do you know where I would find that?
So it's within our Advantage Flex product suite. So you're going to start with Advantage Flex. It's going to be in the same general area that you would find our bank statement guidelines, but there is a specific asset utilization addendum, if you will, that dives into the nuances of this program.
Okay. Can we go back to the rate scenario? So obviously there's different rates. If I'm a bank statement, it's probably going to be higher, I'm assuming. If it's asset utilization, again, it's a specialty program, rates are going to be higher than your standard jumbo. But say I have a standard jumbo and I just am putting 20% down, 780 FICO score. How would I go about figuring out which one I wanted? Would I just go and look at a rate and go, okay, the best rate is who wins?
Well, typically the rate is going to give you a target, right? If your borrower is looking for the most aggressive rate, I might start at the lowest rate and go into the guidelines until it doesn't work for that borrower. So I'm always going to try the best case scenario until it doesn't work. So it's a yes until it's no, essentially, right? If I'm gonna see if they fit all the criteria of the best priced program, and if they get kicked out of that one for some particular reason, then I'm going to move on to the next best priced program, and I'm going to work my way down until something works from a guideline standpoint.
So you do a little bit of jumbo. So tell me, which program are you utilizing the most right now?
Well, I'll tell you that one of the things I always talk to the clients about is, does the property have solar? So we have a program, the Green Advantage, which is under our Jumbo Advantage suite, which is priced extremely competitive to the banks right now because we give a pricing benefit if the property has solar or if the borrower intends to put solar on it. So make sure you're asking those questions. The property doesn't necessarily have to have solar to start, as long as they have a contract to install a solar system, and it can be leased or owned. Once that goes, once that goes into underwriting, we can take that into account, and they would qualify for that program. And that's probably our most aggressive priced jumbo Loan Depot branded program. And then you also have, the Citibank offering is extremely aggressive, but there's some places where that doesn't work well. When you're over into the higher loan amounts, it might require 25% down payment, whereas our Jumbo Advantage program might only require, 10 or 15.
So in your opinion, Brian, just so we're going to wrap this up here pretty quickly, but in your opinion, we can compete with the banks. The myth that IMBs can't, that's not necessarily, obviously somebody can beat us at any given time, but overall, I think we have some pretty competitive products that people could utilize. Would you agree?
100%. I built my business around jumbo. I came over here after 10 years at the bank, and I had real estate agents that wanted to work with me, but were reluctant to do so when I had the Wells Fargo name behind my card. And, it was met with an overwhelming, open arms when I came over here and said I was at Loan Depot, and they said, that's great. Now we can work with you. So the willingness to work with us is definitely, best in class. The product selection that we have here is unlike being at a bank. At a bank, you're dealing with that one bank's small set of programs. Maybe,
right.
Maybe 3 to 5 programs is all they have. Over here, you've got dozens. So, I like that we can always find a solution to any particular scenario. And I know you want to wrap up, but going back to one of the key things on the asset utilization program that I think is missed by almost everyone, there's no debt ratio. So when you're qualifying a borrower on this program, a lot of times people will think, the debt ratio is over 50% or 60%, it'll never work. There is no debt ratio requirement on this program. It only has to do with residual income in the household, and it's minimal. We're talking $1,500 left over if it's one person in the household, or $2,500 left over at the end of the month if there's 2 people in the household. So if you've got asset dissipation of $20,000 a month of income, and you got one person in the household, they can spend $18,500 on their dets, and that's huge. If you equate that to a debt ratio, what is that? 80 something percent or 85%, right? Or
right.
90? I don't even know. So, and I should know that, but that's that's something to keep in mind. No debt ratio. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this.
That's a big one. That's a big one. And I'm sorry I missed that. I knew that too. So thanks for bringing that back to full circle here. So you guys, the bottom line is we have a lot of jumbo products. It takes some time to go in there and look at the guidelines and understand it, but it's definitely well worth it. And you only have to do it once, literally. We have a great jumbo team that will help us as well. So reach out to any of us. We want to help you guys get more deals. I think if you can do one more jumbo deal, you'll be doing much better. So thank you, Brian, again for being on the podcast. We appreciate it. And I will see you guys here very soon.
Thanks for having me. And my Teams chat, my phone, my door is always open. If I can help anyone navigate this, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Brian.